Okay, I am solo today, and I am walking with my good buddy, Scott Ballew. Scott is a filmmaker. He's a musician. He was the head of content at Yeti, which is how we met, making branded documentaries. And he now is the chief creative officer at Tecovas. He also is a Texas playboy, plays on our Sandlot baseball team. And we get into a lot of things as we walk through his neighborhood, my old neighborhood, Travis Heights, here in Austin, Texas. So I hope you guys enjoy this. And Keith, you are missed. All right, here we go.
On your left.
You're listening to Doc Walks with Ben and Keith.
But on the way over here, I was thinking, you're such an interesting combination of so many different things. You're a musician, you are a director, you're a creative director. I knew you, or we worked together a lot when you were a producer. So rather than me describe you, how do you think about yourself? How do you describe what you do?
Most days I feel like a charlatan, and that I'm just like faking all of it and trying to fool people, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't.
Stop it. If you're faking it till you make it, I think you've made it.
I don't know. It's like asking, I fail at being able to describe what genre of music I am too. I don't know how I really think of myself.
Maybe it's kind of a lame question. I mean, do you not think of it like that? Like, you're not like, I'm a filmmaker. You just think of it more as like you're a creative person and it comes out lots of different ways.
I think people ask me what I do, I say I make films and music and stuff, but I also help make films and music, and that's like a facilitator of creation. Never said that. I don't know if that going into that, but I like being in the middle and the process of making things. And sometimes that's songs, and sometimes that's, making brands and building brands. And I think it's all related to storytelling.
So you and I met when you started at Yeti, right? So you were what was your title at Yeti? You were the head of
content?
Yeah.
I kind of came into the creative side of things through the back door.
When we met, you were coming from Los Angeles as a producer, and you had gotten hired at Yeti to basically help them make this kind of new style of advertising, or at least what morphed into what felt like a new style, right?
So the initial job was to start and create and run and figure out, I guess what they're calling their documentary short film program. My background was, I moved to LA from here without any clue or ambition or talent, and kind of wound up on sets for movies and TV shows as like a PA, as a guy that got coffee and
But wait a second, is that true? Because you have the distinction of, we're about 35 episodes in at this point, and we have definitely never interviewed somebody who has a national championship ring from being on. You were a running back.
I was a running back.
And you were on the UT football team when you guys won the national championship, right?
That's true.
So you had to have had some ambition as my...
Well, it wasn't professional ambition. I think that's maybe I was kind of like in the moment, and my dreams only existed as far as I could see. And I think a lot of athletes kind of fall into that sort of thing. Like when their sports career ends, what do I do? I didn't have the foresight to, or really the interest at the time. I didn't uncover my passion in high school or college through academics or anything.
So it was all sports focused when you were growing up?
It was just sports. Like that was what I spent all my time doing.
And was it football? Because we also play on the Playboys together, and you are frustratingly good at baseball.
Well,
you probably come to like every, I don't know, third game or so, But it's like a joke in the dugout that when you get up to bat, you often hit a home run.
Well, I think that's the key. Less is more for me. If I bat once every 3 games, my home run percentage is high. The more I bat, the lower that goes down. It's like playing golf. If I play golf once a year,
right,
I'm really good. If I start playing often, I become worse and worse and worse and worse. So
this is an interesting life lesson.
It's by design, because the key to it all is to not overthink it. I just step up to the plate once every 4 games.
Yeah.
Then I have no bad habits in my head or overthinking my swing. You're on this street, right?
Yeah, we're walking to my old rent house, and this will now be the 2nd episode where we are walking by an old rent house of mine. We did this on Beasley's
Oh, really?
episode. Yeah, we walked by where he and I lived together when I first moved to Austin. Katie and I used to live on this street, and this is right when you and I started working together. And I remember you dropping by this house and looking in one of the windows, and we were watching Three Amigos.
Yes. Well,
Or maybe-
I
or maybe
wasn't
it was
like
a great
peeping.
outdoor.
I didn't have like binoculars or anything creepy. I think I was dropping off some DVDs or something.
You were definitely coming by for a reason. But I
Yeah.
remember you sort of like you walked in, and I think it was Three Amigos. It may have been The Great Outdoors, but you took particular delight in the fact that you were like interrupting us watching a.
Well, I knew we'd
Yeah,
be friends
80s
after
comedy.
that. Yeah, there's some good campfires in this house.
Yes. Yeah. We had many a party in this place. Oh man, and look at this. Like, that was definitely not there when we lived here. That thing seems way too big for that lot.
I prefer that brick. At least they chose like a cool old Mexican brick than like the white space barn. Oh, here she is. This is the yellow tape from here through their windows, and there's still a crime scene.
And this is it. This is the old rent house right here where me and Katie lived during COVID.
It's where young love started.
That's right. So we were talking about how growing up you were focused on sports, and it wasn't until you moved to LA, stopped playing sports, that you became.
Well, first I sold
you found your
insurance.
love.
I was an insurance salesman
You
for 6
were?
months.
I didn't
Yeah,
know this
that's
about
what
you.
insurance seems to be a good profession for all ex-athletes who have no clue what to do. I did that here for 6 months. Turns out that was not my calling, and moved to LA just really on a whim. And the goal, I don't know if I'd call it a goal, but I moved out there, and at the time my buddy Jesse Woods was a musician. He was playing football at A&M when I was playing at UT, and I thought he had a lot of promise as a budding folk singer. And so I went out there, and I think my idea as a 21-year-old, I was going to be like a music manager, a music mogul. I was going to manage Jesse, was my
interesting.
plan. And
Okay.
so he lived on my couch for a little bit, and I kind of drove around town talking to managers and booking agents and record labels, and thought I was going to get in the music business and break Jesse. Was honestly the first year I spent out there. And then, that didn't work, and I had no money, so I started PAing. Like, my cousin was a line producer for commercials, and he connected me with some ADs, and that was kind of at the time it was just like survival, make a couple $100 here and there
Yeah.
to pay for rent while I make Jesse famous. Was
Wow.
and then I did like
Scotty B, I had no idea about this because
really.
Yeah, I didn't know that you A, had sold insurance, B, that
Not so much.
the film wasn't like a particular focus, and that was something that kind of happened almost by accident. That's
It happened, and this it's like it happened by accident, and it took a long time to happen to what I'm doing now. I started out as a PA,
Mm-hmm.
and I did like a season of Entourage as a PA. I did a Noah Baumbach movie called Greenberg as a PA.
Whoa, you worked on Greenberg?
Yeah.
I love that movie.
So like those were cool experiences, and I kind of became interested in the lifestyle.
Yeah.
Less about the art or the craft. I still wasn't like looking at Noah and dissecting his shots and how he interacted with it. Like, I was just thinking like, wow, you get to travel and drink and smoke cigarettes and wear whatever you want. And, you know, not going to an office, this is a cool job.
Yeah.
It's really the extent of my connection with the film business early on.
And this is like early 20s.
This
right?
was like 22, 3, 4
Okay.
is when I kind of moved out there and
Should we go this
living
way?
in Santa Monica. Short version is when you're a PA, you fall into the producers and the line and the AD sort of route,
Right.
which is all logistical, scheduling, money, and not creative really. Like, well, the good ones are creative, but so that led to me kind of going with some other producers to make commercials, and that's how I learned to produce. Is I started as a PA and then a production manager, production coordinator, and then I was a line producer for commercials, and that's kind of became my gig for 4 or 5 years. Well, 10 years ultimately, but it ended up being like line producing, executive producing, big budget, you know, car commercials and
Right.
ad agency stuff, and that's what led to the Yeti thing. I produced Yeti's first broadcast spot.
So we are in Travis Heights on a gorgeous November morning here. There's like these kind of cool wispy clouds in the sky, I guess.
Okay.
And it's like 70 degrees, a little breeze. This is like the sweet spot in
Do
awesome
people ever
weather.
ask you what you're like, what when they pass you, like what these cameras are?
Yeah. Oh yeah, but you
Do
know
they think
the
we're famous?
you know the really interesting thing that I've discovered is that when you are out filming something with like, you know, a crew and big cameras, everybody stops, and no matter what you say you're doing, they want to know about it, right?
Right.
They ask follow-up questions. With this, when I say, "Oh, we're doing a podcast," zero follow-up questions. They're like,
So that's what we should start doing when we have the big cruise. Like,
cameras.
we're just filming an elaborate podcast.
It used to be, you say that you're making a mayonnaise commercial.
Right.
You ever hear that one?
No, but that's good.
That always shut it down. Whenever people would be like, "What are you filming?" Just go, "Oh, it's a mayonnaise commercial," and then that kind of scrambles their brain enough that they just stop talking and move on.
That's funny.
But yeah, I think maybe podcasts are the new mayonnaise, which could be the episode title.
I like that.
Podcasts are the new mayonnaise with Scott Ballew.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So you're in LA. You work with Yeti as a line producer, and then you meet the brothers who started Yeti through that.
Well, I met Corey, the guy we were talking about. Corey Maynard was on set. So yeah, so now we're 10 years into my run in LA, and I've like kind of found my groove as a producer and an executive producer, but you know, on the logistical, money, managerial side of it all, sales. I wasn't directing, I wasn't writing, had no, like, wasn't really crossing my mind. Did the Yeti commercial, we hit it off. I was kind of, you know, 10 years was, I think, all I was ready for in LA.
Yeah.
And they knew that, and they knew I was from here. And Yeti was just like taking off. I think the founder, Roy Cedars, and the head of marketing at the time, Corey Maynard, with their extra marketing money, instead of pumping it into media buys and real cumbersome ad agency driven marketing, they're like, we want to make films and grow our roots and our audience and tell our story and build our brand through documentaries.
And didn't they specifically tell you, we don't want to talk about coolers or ice retention or anything specific about the brand? We want to make documentaries that are good and true, and then presented by Yeti.
Exactly. And we kind of developed it, you know, and part of my job was like, all right, let's hone in our voice and the stories we're telling. But the general brief that was pitched to me is like, we're doing character-driven stories with no product placement.
A story I always tell people when they ask about those Yeti films, we were making the TOOTSIE one, which is the first one that our company, The Bear, did, and I directed, and that's when I met you, because I think you had been hired like right as that shoot
Yeah.
was happening. And we were filming with TOOTSIE. It was sunset, golden hour. She's feeding her cattle by hand. They're literally eating the pellets out of her hand. We're in this pasture. She sits down on the truck bed. She picks up a Yeti tumbler, takes a sip, and the sunlight glints off the logo on the bottom. And I was like, oh, I mean, there's our shot. Like, that's 100%, no question, gonna be in the cut. And so we put together our first edit of it, and that shot is highlighted. And your note was, no, take that out.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind. And then I realized, like, oh, this is something totally different. Like, this isn't about trying to highlight the product in some cool way.
That's kind of why I took the gig, is I had like some PTSD from millions of Corona commercials where you'd spend a whole day just for the cheers and the high five, the sunset high five.
Right.
And, you know, I don't know anything about advertising or marketing, but I loved films and I loved documentaries and I loved Winnebago Man. So all the people that we were bringing in to make these short films were not because they made product Ford commercials. It was because they had like their finger on a pulse of an interesting story and character. And that was the hardest part of my job the first couple of years, was untraining people and just being like, no, do what you do. Do what you guys are good at. Don't think about storyboards or scripts or product shots or these moments that have been ingrained with us on these little 30-second scripts from ad agencies.
As a director who also makes commercials, like, that to me is like a dream, you know? Why do you think more brands don't do that? Like, did it not, because it clearly worked. It translated into Yeti being this enormous international success.
Well, the truth is, I don't know if anyone knows what works when it comes to marketing. Like, it's just like little fairy dust. What was happening at Yeti is it was happening on its own. The word of mouth thing, the cult following, the brand was going from a $40 million to $200 million to $1 billion company, just kind of based on the product and the word of mouth. I think that's why it was a nice position for us to be in. There's no pressure for those to do any heavy sort of lifting in terms of sales. Like, people make commercials to sell stuff when they're going into the fourth quarter or the holidays and they need to sell a certain boot or a certain cup,
right,
or a certain cooler. Like, I think the crazy thing about the timing for all of us at Yeti is that, like, it was almost intended to slow down sales. Like, honestly, they didn't have inventory.
Oh, funny.
So it was like a slow play marketing wise. I think the idea is with stories and documentaries and people is it's not the quick conversion. It's not like, oh, I see Tootsie drinking a Rambler, I'm gonna go buy one. But it's falling in love with Tootsie and being a fan of the brand for life.
Right.
So it was.
Right. So it's more of like, what do they call it? Like the slow food movement.
Exactly. As we call it, like, you know, the Yeti tree, like this oak tree right here, was getting very top heavy because it was growing so fast.
Right.
And my job was to build the roots, so it hung on.
So you spend 10 years at Yeti?
10 years at Yeti.
And you made over 100 of these branded documentaries, right?
We made them. Yeah. The goal when I first started was to make one a week.
Wow.
And I had an insane budget to do that. And it was how we met. It was like I sent out a RFP. Is it an RPF? I don't know the acronyms.
I think it's an RFP. Although I never got one of those. It was always like you and me going and Barrett for lunch. And
exactly.
we would just talk through ideas. Or if we had an idea, we would just text you. And it was usually like yes or no, pretty quick.
Or let's go to Curra's with Evan and feel it out. It started out with me calling all the filmmakers I had worked with that I liked or wanted to work with and said, This is what I'm doing. Do you have any ideas? And then it kind of came to like, hey, you know, I found this person or I found this story, then I need to find the filmmaker. Like, you know, Chris Malloy is like, hey, I think there's this film here on JT Van Zandt in Townes. And
Would you say that's your favorite one, Anchor Point? It's so
Well-
good. I'm sure it's hard to pick your favorite, but like that one in particular seems like it has like all the right elements in it.
that was the unlock where it was, you know, like Tootsie was an ambassador.
Yeah.
Like all the first few were all really ambassador profiles.
Yeah.
JT was the first one. He
That's
wasn't an
nice.
ambassador at the time, and it was kind of a heavy, nuanced story about fatherhood.
Because his dad, of course, is Townes Van Zandt.
Yeah. So that was the first one where you got a little deeper than just like this person does cool things and has a, you know.
Right.
My favorite one was the last one I did, All That Is Sacred.
Oh.
Like that with Jimmy Buffett and Tom McGuane.
When did you start directing the Yeti films? Like, which one was your first?
The
Directorial debut.
first one was The Long Time with Jack.
Oh, wait a second. Hang on. There's some good graffiti right here. Look at this wizard. So, we're talking about your directorial debut was one of the Yeti films that I show people all the time when they ask about the Sandlot baseball team that we play on, which is the one about Jack Sanders. What's that one called?
I think it might just be called The Long Time.
That would make
I
sense.
can't remember. I think it is.
That's the name of the field where our Sandlot team, the Texas Playboys, plays baseball, the long time. And also where Katie, my wife, and I got married
Yes.
on the pitcher's mound. You were there.
I was there.
Yeah. Okay, so that was your directorial debut. And then did you have
Well-
like the moment where it was like, this is what I want to do? This is like all been leading towards this sort of thing?
It all just seemed kind of like utilitarian. I mean, even leading up to that, before Yeti, I had no interest and I was not invited into an edit bay. You know, like my job was to get the footage done in the best way possible under budget and then leave it with the creative people
Right.
or the agency to ruin it. But what happened even with the early ones, like I think as a representative of the brand paying for them, I would come in and give notes or sit with the director and the editor. And as a team, figure out what felt good for us. That was when, you know, I think it started to shift into more of a creative role. I remember the Tootsie one, you know, is like, man, there's something not working. And working with you guys
Oh yeah, I remember that.
to
actually.
figure out, you
Our-
know, like we ended up,
Our first cut had that glinting tumbler
well,
moment.
not only that, but she was interviewed, like she was going through heavy stuff with her family. And like
Yeah.
ultimately,
Right.
we're like, what if we just don't have her talk at all to the very end?
Yes. Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? And
right.
like that was, there's a lot of, all of those films, it was like each one was a film school for
Right,
me, you know,
right.
and like a lifetime exercise of how do we get this story told in a new and interesting way, because I
Yeah.
was doing 20 at a time. So I had the advantages of like, well, this one feels like this one feels like that.
Right.
So I had to go into all these edit rooms with you guys
Right.
and make them not feel redundant to each other,
Yeah.
make it feel right for Yeti, but also represent y'all's vision.
Dude, what an incredible learning opportunity.
It was like, as like going back to just being a dumbass football player, like who did not go to film school. I learned a lot from you guys and having these conversations, and it was a bit of a new medium for a lot of us. Like everyone had done 90-minute films.
Yeah.
Everyone had done 30-second commercials.
Sure.
No one was spending that sort of time and money on a 7-minute film. It was like a
Right.
really new arc. We were all learning together, so we were kind of creating it
Right.
too, but also infusing certain rhythms and styles from commercials that we liked, but also with character development and like the attention to detail of like a 3-act structure of a 90-minute film, which like it was a really
Right.
interesting challenge.
Well, and the budgets were good enough that you could have really nice cameras and you could spend time and you didn't have to rush and you could make really cinematic images, but you could also have multiple days, whereas most of the time commercials are like, you know, every shot has to look perfect and you spend a lot of money to have like a big crew to do things at a very high level very fast. And this was like smallish to medium-sized crew, that allowed us to spend all night with Tootsie smoking a brisket,
Right.
for example. Whereas like we normally just grab a couple of shots of that,
Right.
you know, but we got the ability to like hang out and really get to know our subjects.
Well, and what happened, and this is kind of like, I guess, key to my development as a director, is the budgets were good enough to shoot it right, but I think we kind of also were aware we weren't paying the kind of dough where a director could spend 3 months on an edit. So guys like you and Chris Malloy and Jimmy Chin would shoot it maybe with an editor, do a rough cut, and then oftentimes I found myself, because you guys would go on to other jobs or simply it wasn't respectful financially to make you guys just sit in the edit, like I would come in and sit with the editors. And
Man.
you know, the director started being like, hey, I like these notes, just go and do them.
Yeah.
I'm in Chile shooting something else. So
Right.
what happened is I learned that sort of the way to communicate with editors and patching the story is kind of filling in on the back end for the directors that were, you know, doing the projects on the front end. So that's kind of how a lot of like my taste and rhythm as a director was shaped, was coming in after everything had been shot, whether I was on the shoot or not, and working with the editor to get it to a final resting place.
I can't imagine a much better like way to learn how to be a director, because so many great directors start as editors. Hal Ashby is like a famous example, you know, and his unique sensibility and rhythm and all that came from him understanding how every shot was going to work together.
Well, also you know, I was working with 20 directors at a time.
Right.
So like seeing all the different, I like Ben's sense of humor and like, you know, verite hand movements, and I like, you know, Chris Malloy's soul. Like, I was seeing all these different things, and like a musician just pulling inspiration and tricks
Right.
from 20 people at a time, and just seeing how they worked with subjects and how they worked with cinematographers, and
Yeah.
it was like
yeah.
a real cool, you know, hands-on
Man.
film school.
And you're getting paid
And I'm getting paid
to
a
do
lot.
to do it.
And
And it's also clearly working, which is interesting because you're part of this company that is just growing by leaps and bounds. So that had to have just been a like when you look back on that,
I
do you remember
feel
that as a really
100%
exciting
solely
time?
responsible for the growth of Yeti and why it went public and became such a cult brand.
That's what I mean. You should
Yeah.
be getting lots of royalties. But I mean, like when you look back on that, do you look back on that fondly for the most part? Or
Yeah,
or like-
I look back on it like it was a unicorn moment, and we knew it at the time because a lot of the Farm League guys and Chris Malloy, who I've worked with forever, you know, we saw it happen at places like North Face and Patagonia, where there's always a window that is like the golden era,
right.
when it's the right amount of employees.
Yeah.
It's not
Interesting.
too big and cumbersome.
Yeah.
It hasn't gone public. Once it reaches a certain threshold, Chris and I, we would be, you know, off a mountain in Denali or some catamaran in Hawaii or wherever, and just like take it all in, be present, because this is not going to last forever.
Oh, interesting. That's funny
And
that
it didn't.
that you had that inside perspective, because I think at the time when we were making those films with you guys, our sort of naive assumption was like, this is working so well, and all anybody ever wanted to talk about with us, like other creatives that we would do other spots with, they would want to talk about the Yeti films because they were so unique and so interesting. And so I think we kind of did think like, oh, these are gonna, you know, these are working.
You could feel it going into the airport. If you're wearing a Yeti hat, people weren't coming up to me being like, man, the ice retention on those coolers are really remarkable. They'd be like, man, I saw that JT Van Zandt doc. And
Right.
it
Here,
maybe-
let's stop here for a second. I love this bridge here in this neighborhood in Travis Heights, where there's this little wooden, like what feels very handmade bridge over this beautiful little portion of the creek here. The leaves are turning. Yeah, this always feels like a little hidden gem.
You know, we're like, you'd find it, like Stand By Me kids would find a dead body.
Exactly. So you kind of, that's interesting to me that you sort of knew while it was happening, like this is, because you'd been through it before.
Been through before. People, you know, when I was there, Yeti went public, brought in Corey left. They brought in some new marketing people that I think have pressure to grow.
Yeah.
You know, to grow and to prove what's working. Like the films and a lot of the marketing is intangible. You know, we feel it being out in the world, but there's no, like, how many coolers did this Tootsie film on YouTube sell?
Right.
Like, there was no real concrete evidence. So when a company's sole objective is to grow, it becomes harder and harder to do some of the more esoteric storytelling efforts.
So your last film at Yeti is the 34-minute film about Tom McGuane and Richard Brodigan and Jimmy Buffett. Am I right about that? Was that the last Yeti film?
This is my brother's place. See if
Oh, right here? No way.
Yeah, let's see.
Is he here? See, this is what you did to us. Me and Katie.
There's his dog. That's Diane Keaton.
That's the dog's name? Is
Yeah.
Diane Keaton? Hi, Diane. Your brother's gonna be like, what? Who is torturing my dog
Yeah,
out
she's
here?
a yapper. All right, looks like he's not home. But yeah, anyway, so yes, as the budgets got smaller, you know, it became more necessary for me to be involved as a director. It's
Yeah.
like, honestly, hey, he is home. We're doing a podcast. Hey,
And this is Diane
Diane Keaton, R.I.P.
Oh my goodness.
Hey,
She loves Uncle
Hey.
Scott. Look at that.
she smells Mickey.
Oh, hi. Hi, buddy. Hi, buddy.
How's it going? You gonna be on the podcast? Let's go.
How you doing?
Good to see
Good. Yeah, sorry to just knock on your window there and barge in.
We're just talking about mayonnaise. Come on.
So you were saying as the budgets got smaller, it became...
As the budgets got smaller, I started started making a lot of commercials there that I would come up with or write or direct, and it just
Yeah.
became like I found my voice and the confidence based on the repetition of making all these films, and then also with the budgets getting smaller, we couldn't afford making as many external films as
Right.
we started out. Is kind of what happens with all brands. Like,
Sure.
you know, we can't, how do we do this with the same quality but without the money that we had when we started? And I started making some music stuff with Ryan Bingham and Terry Allen and Margot Price, and directed some of those, and a lot of it was just out of necessity.
But
And-
you're also pitching those ideas as like, this could be a cool way to like reach a new audience of music fans, for instance.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. The Yeti thing was all about dynamics and connecting the dots. How do you connect barbecue with rodeo, and how do you connect
Right.
rodeo with surfing, and surfing with bow hunting, and climbing with skiing? So Ryan Bingham was a good starting point in terms of music, because he also surfed and he rode bulls and he
Right.
loved hunting. So it was a music film but with dynamic people.
I see.
And
the thing I didn't understand that I love about this is that you and Jesse Woods were friends from way back, and so
Yeah.
you start bringing him into the fold of all
Exactly.
this, and he starts making a lot of music for the Yeti films, and you start working with befriend Ryan, and you start making films with him.
with him
Right.
and Terry, through Ryan, I met Terry,
Okay,
and
and that's Terry Allen,
Terry
the
Allen.
famous singer-songwriter artist.
And that's kind of the story of how I got into music. We didn't have huge budgets to score things, so I started just calling my friends, Jesse Woods, Todd Hannigan mainly, Will Patterson, and I would sit with them in the studio and essentially direct them to come up with songs. I would write songs.
Yeah.
The first song I wrote, Good Luck Kid, was written for a documentary because we didn't have any budget to license one. Wrote that for Todd Hannigan to sing, and then I ended up recording it myself for an album. But yeah, you know, learning to write songs was a similar process of just out of necessity, not being able to afford existing songs or pay for some composer to do the whole film. I just started working with my friends.
And so then you start writing lots of songs to the point where you've now put out your fourth album, is that right?
Fourth album in 4 years.
And it's called Paradiso.
Paradiso. Available now, Light in the Attic Records.
And you're actively touring. You're like playing lots of...
Touring is a loose term. Basically, I've taken the Terry method where I'll make an album a year and then try to do one fun show a year, an album release show, and make that fun. And then a couple small things pop up here and there. But because I'm just have a day job, I don't tour.
Yeah. And we haven't even talked about your day job, which is another very creative, very cool way for you to make films for brands. You're now is your title creative director at Tecovas?
Chief Creative Officer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Chief.
Look at you, the CCO at Tecovas.
I don't know, it's kind of like Yeti. I don't know if I don't have like business cards or anything.
When you leave Yeti, you were directing commercials, right? For hire, essentially, or with another production company. And when did Tecovas come in the picture?
All right, so the last film I did at Yeti was the All That Is Sacred. And
which we should talk more about, because
okay.
I love this film, and it premieres at Telluride. It's about Jimmy Buffett, Tom McGuane, Richard Brodigan, this really influential, beautiful, amazing group of creative people that all found each other in the Florida Keys in the 70s, early 80s. I didn't really know about that subculture. So like, how did you come across that story, and why did you want to make that film?
Well, oddly, I grew up like a big Jimmy Buffett fan.
Yeah, really?
So like,
was your dad a pirate?
No, I went through this like weird pirate phase when I was in 6th grade, and went through all the Jimmy Buffett catalog. I pierced my ear.
Wow.
And wore like one of my mom's dangly earrings, and took out my bed and put in like a hammock and like tried to sleep in it. Admittedly, I never told my mom this, but it was so uncomfortable. I never really slept on the hammock, but I just slept on the floor. But I just had.
But you had to commit to the bit.
I committed to the bit. And Jimmy Buffett was writing books at that point, like Where Is Joe Merchant, and A Salty Piece of Land, and I don't know. I still don't remember how I got into it, but through all that, I was super aware of Key West.
Yeah.
And tangentially, Tom McGuane, who's his brother-in-law, and these kind of like these writers that he hung out with.
Yeah, and Tom McGuane wrote River Runs Through It, and
Tom McGuane is the one that brought River Runs Through It to Redford and said, I think you should make this movie. But he wrote some books, like 92 in the Shade was his first big one, kind of a cult classic. Panama. He wrote a bunch of long form fiction and then a bunch of short form fiction. Anyway, the short version is I grew out of my Jimmy Buffett phase. Cut to like 30 years later, a friend sends me this book called Some Horses by Tom McGuane.
Okay.
Which is a collection of short stories about horses.
Okay.
And then also Jim Harrison. Jim Harrison was Tom's best friend and a poet, and he wrote Legends of the Fall. And so this was all at the beginning of the pandemic and coincided with getting to know Terry and making a couple things with Terry, and Jim's poetry and Tom's words and Terry's whole philosophy became the unlock to me wanting to write songs.
Say more about that. What's the philosophy?
Terry's philosophy is like, you don't have to be one thing and just do it because you love to do it. Terry was a painter, a sculptor, a visual artist, a playwright, a musician, a songwriter, a husband. I kind of just spent 3 years with him and became like part of the family. Started spending New Year's with him and just seeing how he viewed the world and lived as an artist broke it open for me, at least spiritually, be like, I'm not just a commercial director. I'm not just a documentary commercial. You don't have to be one thing. Follow the muse on a daily basis because you want to. Forget about the audience. He was really the only one that was kind of encouraging when I started writing songs. Wow. I would send him some songs and, kind of going back to what you said about Rick Rubin, just do it. Just
make the thing that you want to see or listen to.
So anyway, that was all happening and reading a lot of like just Tom and Jim have just like this really sharp wit and use of language and turns of phrases, and all of that jumbled with what I was listening to musically to, I think, help shape.
What was that like for you? Because when you and I were becoming friends, one of the main things I remember was how into Terry Allen you were, and you were listening to him all the time. And so to then all of a sudden make friends with him and have him like encourage you that way, that had to have been incredible.
Well, it was, and it's kind of started through Ryan Bingham. When we were doing the film series with Ryan, he suggested Terry was the guest, not knowing how obsessed I was with Terry.
Yeah.
I was like, of course.
Oh, wait a minute, we gotta get this sign here. Dogs may bite.
But yeah, so Terry, you know, we did the Midnight Hour, which was the Ryan Bingham series, and through that,
And that was a music series that you did
with
for
Yeti.
Yeti, yeah.
And through that, like, I think Terry was really proud of how that came out, and he was doing this show. He started doing these shows at the Paramount, and this was like another sort of exercise of just like function. He called and was like, I want to film it. I want to direct something around this like live concert thing. And I was told at the beginning there was a budget, and then turns out there wasn't a budget. And at this point, I had like people lined up to shoot it. Also had the suspicion that no one was gonna watch just like a hour-long concert film of my obscure hero.
Right.
So basically what happened to that is he called and asked, and like, how do you say no to Terry Allen? So we made this little film for $0, kind of on the heels of all these Yeti projects is really what happened. And every shoot that I was at with a crew that was near someone that I could interview about Terry, I would just be like, can we spend an hour interviewing this guy? And it was one of those things, like, I didn't know what it was going to be going into it. Like, I thought, I was like, all right, maybe I'll just film the concert and give him the footage. But it just kept building one little section at a time until I was like, all right, I think we can make like a little hour-long kind of like half concert film. Doesn't tell a story, but it gives it context.
I remember you and I talked about a John Prine film that was kind of like that too, where it was like half concert film and half like just hanging out with John Prine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the hope was for the budget and the access. The best hope was it to be like a calling card of like, if someone asked you who Terry Allen is, you could be like, watch this, that's Terry Allen.
Yeah.
I feel like that was all these are little precursors leading up to, whatever the next thing is, because it still wasn't a full documentary. It still felt like a bit of a compromise because of how we had to make it.
And that film is called Everything for All Reasons.
For All Reasons.
And then that came before All That Is Sacred.
Yes.
Correct?
All That Is Sacred, going back to reading a bunch of Tom and Jim, beginning of pandemic, I just emailed Tom McGuane and said, I'd like to make a film on you. And it was kind of vague. I just knew I wanted to start with Tom. And I knew about his friendship with Jim. Obviously, I knew about Jimmy Buffett. I knew about Key West, but I think going into it, the idea was to do one on Tom.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because he has a crazy life. He's in the Literary Hall of Fame. He's in the Fly Fishing Hall of Fame and the Cutting Horse Hall of Fame.
Wow.
So,
talk about like the Terry Allen model, like you don't need to be one thing.
Exactly. And basically I went out there, he's like, all right, I don't know who you are, but come out and talk and I'll sniff you out. And I went up to Livingston, Montana, spent like a day with him talking.
So you flew out specifically to pitch him on making a project with him.
And we liked each other. He's like, all right, let's do it, without any sort of like, here's what the documentary is.
I want to stop right there and ask you some more questions about this, because one of the things that I admire about you and I feel like you're really good at is befriending people who you admire artistically, or like being able to collaborate with lots of different people. And so this is a situation where you don't know this person, you want to collaborate with them on a project, you're going to essentially convince them to give you access. How do you go about doing that? What are you trying to do when you're trying to get access like that?
Well, the hope is that you just be yourself, you know?
Right.
I think going back to what I learned from all you guys and working from all these different directors is how to do that, and the type of filmmaker that I wanted to be was, which I think is limiting too, but it's like the only way I feel comfortable doing is, you know, there's filmmakers, like you can call them like gotcha filmmakers, or the stories that are out there where you're trying to expose someone or
Right.
you know, extract something.
Right.
I think all the people that I've always drawn to was drawn to are people that I admired and wanted to learn from, and saw them as like giving a blueprint to the world of how to live and how to think and how to, you know, handle adversity and struggle. So it's like, it's kind of like a one-sided thing that I was interested in as someone who just loved biographies and loved biopics. It's like, how do these people do it? How do these people that I'm inspired by, who are having unique life experiences, how do they do it? I wasn't drawn to these kind of corrupt, fucked up stories where I could expose something or go in and extract. I was like really candidly just interested in people that I looked up to because I wanted to learn.
I love that because it's so pure, and you're approaching it like a fan. You're just saying, I like what you do, I want to be around what you do, and I want to like shine a light and help sort of give you a stage or a platform, basically.
Well, kind of like what you're doing with this doc. You know, if I was a 21-year-old insurance salesman, the type of films that I feel like I ended up making are the type of films that, had I seen at 21, I would have quit my insurance job and go try to do it. Like a lot of these projects, I don't know if it's good or bad, but a lot of them are started without knowing what the end is going to be.
Oh, I think that's the only way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, who said it's like if you end up with the documentary that you set out to make, then you didn't make a documentary.
You failed.
Yeah.
And you know, Albert Maysles, who's like one of my heroes, and he's one of the founding fathers of verite documentary, always talked about you just really need to love your subjects. Yeah. And that's the reason you're there. And then everything else reveals itself to you. But if you start from that place of just loving the person you're filming, then it's going to work out.
Yeah. And that's what with the Terry thing is like, the goal was, because I always had a hard time explaining who Terry was or why he was so interesting to me, or why he was so out there, why he was so creative. So going into it, I thought, that's going to be the film. I'm going to explain how cool and creative Terry is.
Right.
And I remember being like a dumbass asking David Byrne questions like that. And David just looked at me like, I'm not going to answer that. This is what makes Terry special. He's been married for 60 years and he has a family and he's genuine and he's kind and he's done all these things while being an artist.
Wow.
He's like, very few people do that. So like, that was like one of those moments like, wow, that's the film. And that's what it ended up being, is like, yeah, he's creative, doing very interesting work, but like at the core, he's a decent guy that's held it all together and is still married with his girlfriend that they met when they were 12. Wow. And it just struck me as like, that's what David Byrne is impressed by.
Yeah.
And he's right. So that's going back to the McGuane and Buffett thing, is after the first interview with Tom, which was like, you know how it is, the first one's kind of exploratory. Let's like unpack some things, and then the job of a documentary director is to follow the truth or what's interesting to you.
Yeah.
And after the first one, it was clear that he had these lifelong friendships that are now gone because of death and age and disease. Mm-hmm. And he hadn't really reconciled with that. And this magical era that culminated in Key West in the early 70s was symbolic of this friendship that became lifelong creative partners and competitors, and all these people were now gone or fading. Jimmy Buffett died right the day that we premiered it at Telluride.
I was going to ask you about that. That's so strange and so synchronous, it feels like. You know, like you're making a film about mortality and, like you said, everything you just said, and then when you premiere it, he's supposed to be there, and instead gets sick and passes.
Well, Guy, the other subject, he passed away right after we locked the picture. So the last thing he saw was the final.
Wow.
And
did Jimmy Buffett get to see the film?
Jimmy Buffett got to see it. He loved it.
Wow. Oh, Scott, that had to feel
And that's
amazing,
how
dude.
you know, it's that's going like, what'd you say, love your, like, I think a goal, and this is, not all filmmakers operate like this, and I don't know if anyone's gonna win an Academy Award operating like this, but so much, I felt like people like TOOTSIE or Evan or JT Van Zandt or Terry, they trust us enough to come in and tell their story. Like, so much of my goal as a filmmaker was to present something that they were proud of.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Which it's hard to do that, to tell a complicated and nuanced story and get some of the darkness and all the stuff necessary to build an arc. Because I think a lot of these things are meant to like destroy people. You know, like a lot of the good documentary, like Jeffrey Epstein is an obvious example. But
You mean like instead of being like an expose where it's exposing somebody as like a criminal or whatever, like yours are more from a fan's perspective where you're showing people why they should love them and become fans.
yeah, but also showing them their flaws and how they handle that. You know, you can't do just this one-sided puff piece. But
and especially now when we live in this era of the Charlie Sheen documentary and the Pam Anderson doc, and
they're all
Beyonce.
making it themselves.
That's what I mean. Like everybody's an executive producer on and controlling their own story so tightly that you can't make something that's like poetic and true. And
no,
I always use the Tom Petty documentary as an example.
And then he made another hit.
Exactly. Peter Bogdanovich's story, which is like the music is amazing and he's with him in the studio during all these pivotal moments and literally nothing ever goes wrong.
There's one sneeze, like, and he was a heroin addict and less for his wife, but then he made another hit.
He goes solo and breaks up with his band, and then they triumphantly get back together and make a #1 album, and nobody's feelings
the most one-sided documentary.
Totally. Where really the truth and the story about Tom Petty is so much more interesting and would bring so many more people in.
That's a great example of a one-sided puff piece.
Yeah. So, all right. So then you premiere that at Telluride, which had to have just been incredible. Oh. What was that like? I mean, that's because to have a film at Telluride is like most filmmakers' dream.
It was crazy, and it was a culmination. I knew it was going to be my last film at Yeti. And like, you know, the struggle, like all the stuff that we tried to do, submitting the short films to South by and all the film festivals. And I feel like we made a lot of good 7 to 10 minute documentaries. And the problem with all of them was like, what's the distribution? Like, what are the accolades? And there weren't any. And I think kind of like the Terry film, I wish there would have been a way to make the McGuane and Buffett film into a 90-minute piece. Because it ended up being 35 minutes based on access, based on budget, based on footage, and based on who was around. And just the story, you know. You could do the Tom Petty, Jimmy Buffett doc in 4 parts, easy.
Right.
But this was like, I think where I'm at with a filmmaker, the more specific, the better for me, you know?
And this was just about that time
just
where
about that time and that friendship.
The friendship, and then when they're really all kind of at the beginning of their careers.
So at this point, after 100 of these, my expectations for what happens with these films were low. You know, it's like they go on YouTube, some people see them, great. But I get a call from Frank Marshall. For those of you who don't know, is Steven Spielberg's producer, did the Bourne Identities series,
Close
Benjamin
Encounters,
Button, married to Kathleen Kennedy. So Kennedy Marshall is, and he's directed a bunch of films too. But
he's making a ton of documentaries.
He directed the Bee Gees one. He's doing the Beach Boys one, Fleetwood Mac.
Wow.
But anyway, it was cool, and he was friends with Jimmy Buffett, which is how he saw the film.
Okay.
And Frank Collins like, this Scott Ballew, you know, congratulations, your film's in Telluride Film Festival. It was a surreal experience because that happened, you know, maybe 6 months before Telluride, and then after that, one of the key subjects, Guy de la Valdine, passed away. And you know, leading up to the festival, Jimmy was supposed to be there. And we got word like 3 days before that about his cancer, and then he died the day. And that Friday we premiered it, and Frank and Tom were in the audience.
Wow.
The day so it was just like a heavy, crazy feeling.
Did they come up after and do a Q&A?
We did a Q&A, and Tom did one of the funnier Q&As I've ever heard, like in light of the death. But it was heavy.
You must have felt like you were almost part of that crew in a way, to be there with them during that pivotal moment.
I just felt really relieved that, you know, we were able to capture it and show them. Jimmy was so proud. Like, I think you get, think of mortality and all that. Like, I think part of the film was them finally acknowledging how magical that time was. And with all of their success and money, I think everyone has that sort of Valhalla era. So I was just relieved that Jimmy got to see it with his family. I like preserving these legacies and stories, having people be able to watch and learn and get inspired by them, because I think these people that live extraordinary lives, that's how I learn, is through how they did it.
I love that. So what are you working on now? Now you're at Tecovas.
So I'm at Tecovas. That premiered. Telluride came out, and
this is 2023.
This came out almost a little over a year ago, over a year ago. So yeah, after 10 years of Yeti, I leave, trying to figure out, write some music, direct some freelance commercial stuff, and then get connected with another awesome brand, Tecovas, who was looking for some help rebranding. Started making commercials with them on kind of like a one-off contract basis, and they liked them, and kind of have since brought me in to run their whole creative department, marketing, and rebrand, which has been fun because it's been a different muscle than Yeti. It's been all real specific, scripted, like short form commercials, and then started to do longer form scripted short stories to test the water there.
So was that your idea to go, because you're so steeped in this world of documentary, did you want to challenge yourself and do something new by going scripted?
I think, you know how it is, like you do 100 of anything, it starts to feel repetitive.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of the feeling at Yeti, is like, all right, how do I make another fishing film interesting or different? How do I feel like we really cracked the code on the 7 to 20-minute short film, documentaries. And so in a way, I went back to the beginning and making these really kind of stylized, cool 30-second commercials seemed like a new challenge. And going back to the necessity of it all, where it's kind of internal, so I'm writing them and directing them and get to do the music for some of them.
Let me wax your car for a second, because the first Tecovas commercial that I saw after you took over, we watch a lot of baseball at our house, and it played constantly.
Yeah.
And it's so good. And you used a track by one of my favorite artists, Dean Johnson.
What's up, Dean?
That changed his career, like made him a lot more well-known, I think. And then all of a sudden I started to see Tecovas billboards popping up that I'd never seen before. And it seems like you really had an impact pretty quickly over there.
It was a little bit of a blank canvas, or it seemed like a new challenge because it was so specific. It was the West.
Right.
It's fashion, it's music.
Yeah.
Yeti was everything, all over the world.
Right. So you got to like focus in on just one genre, basically.
And a genre that I understand.
Yeah.
You know? So that's been fun. And then now we're at the phase, like, how do we, going back to the storytelling, like every brand, like you said, because of the Yetis, because of the Patagonias, everyone's trying to figure out their storytelling. I had a hard time getting excited about doing more aspirational, character-driven documentaries. So at Telluride, one of the cool things is you meet other directors. I got humiliated meeting Wim Wenders and Werner Herzog, but I met Jeff Nichols. Like, I was sat next to Jeff Nichols at Telluride.
Yeah.
Two Austin people.
Yeah.
In a sea of like just crazy,
crazy
artists, and we bonded and have been trying to figure out something to do together. So when Tecovas, like, what would be your dream project right now if we wanted to do something long form?
Yeah.
Them thinking that I was gonna be like, I want to do a documentary on this guy.
Right.
I called Jeff and I was like, I had this idea for doing like a love letter to Texas, stitching together scenes and characters and themes from like 8 iconic Texas films, and made a little rip out of these old films that Jeff wrote a script to. That'll be like a 7-minute, very specific, stylized short film.
And it references like Paris, Texas, and
Giant and HUD, Tender Mercies,
cool.
No Country for Old Men, last picture show. And for fun, we threw in Badlands, even though it's, technically not Texas, but
Yeah, well, he lives
Malik's
here.
from here.
Wow, man, that sounds like a dream. That's so cool.
So it'll be either really cool or the thing that gets me fired.
Well, most good things start like that, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we're here, we're at the end of our walk, and we do a thing at the end called the lightning round. So, what was the first movie that made you want to make films or think about becoming a director?
Maybe it's not an easy answer. I think there's like 3 that came out, I feel like the same year that it was Dig, it was the Be Here to Love Me, and the Daniel Johnson
Cool,
film.
yeah.
And I'd be lying if I said that those made me want to make films,
Yeah.
but it was, I saw it at the time in my life where I realized like that I was doing the wrong thing,
Well, and interesting about that is 2 of those 3 are Texas stories.
I know.
Yeah.
So going full circle, we ended up making a Yeti film with Margaret.
Yep.
Jeff was her assistant. Jeff Nichols was Margaret's assistant making that film. And then
Which-
JT Van Zandt was in it.
Which Yeti film was that one that you made with Margaret?
Margaret, we did a film called The Jubilee.
Okay.
About and she pitched, or actually this is one where I found this article about this Jubilee that happens outside of Mobile, Alabama, where she's from. And pitched it to her to direct, and it was great and fun and good experience. The one that I was still in college when No Direction Home came out, the Bob Dylan one.
Oh, yeah.
And that really messed me up. That wasn't, it was like debilitating. Like it was beyond inspiring.
Say more about that. What do you mean?
Well-
it tipped over. It was like so inspiring that it made you.
It was
feel
so
like-
inspiring, it made me feel like I would never achieve anything in my life. Like I'm a grandiose thinker.
Yeah.
And the scale of Bob Dylan's like catalog and
Right.
and like whole thing, at 20 or 21 years old to see that, my reaction wasn't like I want to go do something special. It was like I'll never do anything special.
Right.
And it was really cool. I remember with no instinct of that I might be a filmmaker. Just I really liked that Scorsese chose to. It was such a specific window. It was 4 hours, and it ended at the motorcycle crash in like 66 or 67. It didn't do the whole thing. It didn't do the Tom Petty, And I was like, that's a cool choice.
Yeah.
It just ends, and then, there's 60 years since that was left unanswered, but it just emphasized the persona and the mystery and all the cool stuff surrounding Bob.
I can deeply relate to what you said about feeling so inspired that it tips over into being like self-pity, because I feel that way a lot of times when I see something like that, where like the Scorsese doc series that's out right now. I so admire people who just feel so compelled towards one direction that is so clear.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I haven't had that clarity in my life where it's like, oh, this is the thing, and you just like find it early and you just exploit it to its like fullest, most amazing potential. And I suffer a lot from feeling like this sense that like I want to live up to my potential. And so when I get down about that, I can get like in kind of a dark place, like, oh, that means I'm a failure or something. But what I've come to realize as I've gotten older is that it's also that instinct that makes me a creative person.
Yep.
And like being hard on myself in that way is the thing that makes me want to make the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Well, it makes you dynamic too. Like going back to the Terry thing versus Scorsese, because I had that feeling doing all the Yeti films. The common denominator is like, wow, these people got obsessed with what they were doing at a young age. Surfing, skiing, climbing. And it's like, I didn't have that with songwriting or filmmaking. So I was like at this disadvantage starting in my mid-30s, where all these people, the Paul Thomas Andersons and the Scorseses, making Super 8 films when they're 6 years old.
Yeah.
It was like, that was not me.
Yeah.
So it was like, it's overwhelming. Like, well, of course. But then you also like, Scorsese is an example, like, there are the dark side of being one track minded and obsessed, and like, all of the carnage with the family stuff and the addiction and all this.
5 times.
So going back to like you or Terry, like you're a husband and a father, and you play baseball and you make commercials and you make documentaries that people love, and you're making podcasts. So I think that was because the Dylan thing, like, and all the Yeti stuff made me insecure. Like, well, the path I chose at that age was football, and that didn't work out.
Right.
That's what I knew better than anyone. That's what I was born to do. And then that ended when I'm 20, 21. I wish I would have just been obsessed with filmmaking when I was 5, or obsessed with surfing, or just find these things. So I think it is debilitating to see these people with these lifelong obsessions fully do it. But I've turned the corner and I'm drawn to people who are dynamic, the Jack Sanders of the world,
Right.
the McGuanes of the world, who can
Yeah.
be like, yeah, I might write a book, but I'm also gonna enter rodeos, and I'm also gonna write short stories. I'm also gonna
Right.
have grandkids, and I'm also gonna travel, and
Yeah.
I'm also gonna do this. So I think, my big takeaway from the Townes, this is all getting really meta now in full circle, but the Townes documentary, the takeaway from the Townes thing, and then getting to know JT and doing that was like, art / your legacy isn't worth being an asshole, a miserable asshole. The carnage of these one-track mind obsessed people, it's a selfish pursuit. And someone like Townes Van Zandt or Blaze Foley, all these people that we might have grown up in Austin idolizing,
Yeah.
you get to know their sons or the people around them
Yeah.
and be like, oh, you start to think about the actual smells of what it was like to be around them, and the wet dogs and the fucking needles and the ashtrays. And JT being just abandoned on like airport stoops waiting for him. You're like, that's not worth a song. And so you meet people like Terry or Tom or even Jimmy Buffett, who's like, I'm just gonna do the best I can, but also try to have a full life
Right.
and do interesting things. I think I'm finding peace of like, trying to do it all. But there is the sense of the greats who are like, these guys were just obsessed.
Right.
And they did one thing their whole life until
Yeah.
they were the master. Sorry, these answers aren't
But
very
not-
rapid.
I know we're not doing a good job with the lightning round, but it's getting me thinking, like maybe, because I do understand I've felt that very strongly a lot of times, of that almost like shame that you haven't done enough. And I wonder if the lesson is that we're supposed to like find inspiration from that and transpose it in our own way, not
Yeah.
try to be like they are, but do it in the way that comes naturally to us. Like
Yeah.
you working with your friends to make the next cool project because you met Jeff at Telluride and you're just riding the wave of that experience,
Yeah.
right? Or Jesse from childhood and you need some music, and so I'll work with my buddy. And I
Yeah.
think I have one of those unfortunate LA stories where after Winnebago Man, I got all the managers and agents and was having lunch with celebrities and being told how awesome I was. And I was like, I'm going to go this direction and leave
Yeah.
my friends behind. Not in that way, not like purposefully and really coldly, but more like I'm going to go do new things with new people.
Right.
And I wish, if I had to do over, that I would have brought all of the people with me that had helped me make things up to that point, rather than go and just try to like be a stranger in a strange land and almost start over. It's long-winded way of saying that like it's a good lesson, I think, to just like be where you are and work with the people who you are around and take that inspiration from the Bob Dylans and channel it and work through those people. Work in that way.
I think that's where I've landed. The emphasis being on the process.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
experience.
Right.
And who you surround yourself with. Because like at the end of the day, Townes Van Zandt isn't around enjoying his posthumous legacy.
Right. Right.
He died in a trailer park with little friends or little to show for it. I'd rather have fun making something with the people that I love
Yeah.
and hope for the best. Then like even some of those Scorsese films, you're like, that didn't look fun to make. So that's always gonna be the rub.
Yeah.
And like, it's just as challenging sometimes working with your friends and the people you love as it is complete strangers, when there's that much emotion and familiarity and like, but it's like a family. You can have these hard conversations
Yeah.
and get through it. And making music too is like, I want people in the studio or on stage with me that like I have a good time with and
Yeah.
I can learn from, and like we're friends, because that's really the only tangible thing that comes from it is like the moment.
All right. Dream collaborator. If you could work with anybody, who would it be?
Well, I mean, I'm doing it with Jeff Nichols right now, meeting him at I remember seeing Mud and thinking like, wow, there's someone that lives in Austin that, writes and directs movies with actual movie stars. You know, like that seemed like a
big deal.
Of course, we have like Linklater. There's like some amazing. You know, you have like the Robert Rodriguez and stuff, but there's something like kind of personal and homemade feeling about Jeff's films. He's on the top of my head because it was just one of those kind of, you know, things with how a lot of these happens. We were randomly sitting next to each other at Telluride, bonded over a few things, and like a year later we're working on something.
That transitions nicely into the last question, which is like, what is the thing right now that you can't stop thinking about?
A custom couch. No, that project is like, I'm like, you know, I spent the last 2 days working on a song with Ryan Bingham for this little film, and you know, we just scouted whatever we're making with Jeff, and we just scouted West Texas. So it's like that's on the mind right now, and then I'm about to record another record, so my kind of thought is on that film, and then just inspiration, kind of direction for the next record. I like to go all the way in one at a time with a project, but I'd love to. I think doing All That Is Sacred left some desire to make a full-length documentary, which I've never made. Cool. You know, so I'm kind of just actively thinking about what that could be.
Love it. Well, this has been amazing, Scotty B. Thanks for taking the time and going on a walk.
Yeah.
Is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to?
No, I mean, I think give credit. I feel like Winnebago Man fits in that. Like there was such a golden era of that, I guess called mid-aughts, like documentaries, you know, that I feel like did like all of these that you were definitely in the middle of and responsible for, and I think have inspired a lot of people to go out and find these characters. I look at like what's Lance Oppenheimer, you know, there's you know, he's making some good ones, but I feel like in terms of finding the, you know, with Chop and Steel, and like you have that sort of Oppenheimer instinct of like, this is an interesting underworld and capturing the nuance of these people.
Oh, so it's shucks. Well, thanks, man. Thank you for waxing my car. I really appreciate it. And to wax yours back, like the Yeti work that we made together, like that TOOTSIE doc is still one of the things that I'm most proud of, and I really feel like I connected with her on a like true like emotional level, to the point where when I go to Snow's, you know, she gives me a big hug. We still trade Christmas cards, me and TOOTSIE, and
yeah, we made some lifelong friendships, and made like, I feel like these are a gift to a lot of these subjects too, that you guys did. And you know, the whole back to who do I want to collaborate with, like it's hard to answer, because I feel like over the course of the 10 years I was able to do that with you guys, and like got to work and learn from the best and the people that inspired me, behind the camera and in front of it.
That's awesome, man. Wow, can't ask for much more than that.
Yeah. So
people can find your work. You've got your new record is Paradiso. And where can people find your films and your music? And
most of them, All That Is Sacred, the latest one's on YouTube. Everything for All Reasons is on iTunes and Amazon.
Okay.
And the rest is on my website, leisurerodeo.com.
Leisure Rodeo. Cool. Yeah. All right. Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was Scott Ballew.
That was Scott Ballew. Apparently, I wasn't actually there for it. Like you, I am just checking in with Scott Ballew for the first time here. Ben, great job.
Thank you. You were missed on that walk. I know you have been very busy. Tell us what you've been doing.
You know, it's the end of the year, and I'm just trying to get in grant submissions. We're doing multiple grants. I've got 4 projects in development, and each one has like one significant grant or one kind of initiative we're applying to, which means write-ups, tightening up sizzle reels, decks, the whole.
You're a real show-off. See, I'm just not as productive.
Well, you've got a company to run and business to conduct. Ben, tell me about this T-shirt and our first ever sponsor.
Our first sponsor is the Longtime Texas.
What is that?
It is a venue. My wife, Katie, and I got married there.
Okay, but it's a baseball field, right?
It's also a baseball field. Scott Ballew and I play on the Texas Playboys, started by Jack Sanders, and that is the name of the baseball field. It's called the Longtime. There's also concerts out there. You can rent it for all kinds of different parties, etc. So the Longtime is our first sponsor, and it makes sense because Scott and I play on the team together.
Well, we've been doing this for 9 months, so that's a long time. It feels a real long time.
That is a
and so
truly long
thanks
time.
to Jack Sanders, thanks to the long time.
That's right.
And if you are considering sponsoring Doc Walks, what will you get, Ben?
Well, you'll get shout outs in the episode. We can put your logo in the credits. We can post about you on social media. We can talk you up in the episode.
That's right. We can do all that stuff. We're not going to overdo it, right? Because we're still documentary filmmakers, and
I mean, Keith might get a tattoo.
very, very unlikely unless you hit a certain threshold, and it's high.
But anything's possible, folks.
You know, our social media footprint is growing
That's right.
by the moment.
That's right. We just passed 400 followers on Instagram today, so we're
you
very
believe it?
excited about that benchmark. And next week, we have documentary filmmakers Louis Alvarez and Andy Colker.
You know what? I'm not doing it.
And you're not doing that one either.
I'm not going to go. I'm not showing up for that. I'm going to make you tell me about it after the fact, or maybe
Excellent.
I'll just watch it like you guys. Louis Alvarez and Andy Coker.
Here from New York, longtime collaborators with Paul Steckler.
Nice. Episode 19.
Ooh, I like that you know the episode number like that. They have been making documentaries together for 50 years, which is amazing. I mean, we haven't even been doing this podcast for a year. Can you imagine 49 more years of this?
I cannot. And I have a good imagination. I'm excited about that one. I have spent a good amount of time with Andy and Louis, and they are full of jokes. They're full of experiences. They're full of information.
And it's a fun walk. We go all around the UT campus. We comment on sculpture and the Ransom Center. They tell me about an architect who designed one of the buildings I knew nothing about. So it's very informative, and I had a blast walking around UT with those guys.
Okay, so thank you, Scott Ballew. Thank you to the long time, and tune in next time for Louis and Andy and my friend Ben.
On
Doc
Doc
Walks.
Walks. Hey, in stereo. All right.
All right, Doc Walks is presented, directed, created, edited by myself and this guy.
Hello.
We couldn't do it without co-producer Dayton Thompson,
No, we
who
couldn't. Thank you, Dayton.
continues to knock it out of the park. Thank you, Dayton, and thanks to the folks at the Bear,
The folks at Go Valley, we have a team of interns that are working hard for us.
and thank you for sticking around. If you're still here, you're a diehard, and we appreciate you. We'll catch you next time.
On Doc Walks. Follow us at Doc Walks Pod on Instagram, X, and YouTube.